My name is Willy Bolander. I study influence, persuasion, and leadership in selling and sales management, and I teach people how to sell. In this podcast, we'll talk to some of the world's top sales leaders and see what we can learn from them. Welcome to the Sales Lab. We need the performance records from this one company to be able to finalize our analysis. And almost without fail, the way companies track data, no, not without fail, often, shockingly frequently, the way companies track data is pretty weird, you know? Like there's a pretty clean way to track data where you just jam everything into a traditional matrix style spreadsheet, you know? And that allows you to analyze it in a variety of different software programs and in about a million different ways. And then companies will be like, well, you know, we put all of this month's performance in one Excel sheet. And we wanted it to look pretty, so we put boxes around it and added empty cells to give it this look. You're going, yeah, but then how do you guys analyze this data that you put in like such a weird format? And so, communicating with companies about, well, that's not going to get us what we need. Here's what we need.
Data is just data, right? Data is data. What my team talks about is insights, right? So you can have all the data in the world, and we're an analytical company. We sell to analytical people, and there are some really good visualization tools and things that take that data and we utilize them. But I have to say, sometimes the tool just doesn't work the right way. So we have to go back to what we call Excel gymnastics, right? Where we got to jump through a bunch of hoops to get to, that deciding piece of data. And, every business group does it a little bit differently. So, to get the full 360 takes a lot of work. The bigger the company, I'm sure, the more complex it gets, right? So,
big time. Well, and then, you have a lot of companies that are playing the mergers and acquisitions game, and then they acquire a company who does it completely different. And then you just wind up with files and files that,
How can we get to a decision here? Or how can we at least get to some insight as to what direction we're going, right? I always talk about flying the plane without instruments, right? And I'm not a pilot or anything, but I don't want to be flying my business without the proper instruments. And again, that may be just because of my background as an analytical chemist, but most of the people I meet feel the same way. It's like, okay, give us some insight as to what this data is saying, so that we can make decisions, and whether tough decisions or easy decisions, we still want some data to back them up. We just don't want to go out on a lark. So,
yeah. Well, I guess I will take a moment here to introduce you. We are with John DiMare, and you are with Agilent Technologies. And maybe we can start by just you can tell us a little bit about your background, which you just mentioned a little bit of it, but tell us where you came from and where you are now and what happened in between. This content is brought to you by the TIES Sales Showdown. That's the Technical, Industrial, and Engineering Student Sales Showdown, hosted right here at Texas A&M University. We have over 200 engineering students taking sales classes every semester and a growing minor program in technical sales. These students are smart enough for STEM and savvy enough for sales, and the TIES Showdown allows them to demonstrate their selling skills in a role-play competition where industry partners, like you, serve as judges and provide them coaching feedback. If you're hiring for technical, industrial, or engineering sales roles anytime in the next couple of years, this is an event you can't miss. You can learn more at tx.ag/TIES. That's tx.ag/TIES. Hope you can join us.
Oh, wow. How much time you've got, Willie? But I'll try to keep this brief, right? So I got out of school with degrees in chemistry. And from there, I went to work in a lab, or we call it the bench, right? And it was for a small generic pharmaceutical company. and learned a ton of what chemistry looks like in the real world, right, in industry, and in a highly regulated industry, I'll give you. So that was a great experience. From there, it seems to be, as I look back, it seems to be like all these changes happen with other changes going on. So I took a job out of that lab with a very small company selling like scientific software. We were a channel partner for IBM at the time. And when I say everything happens at the same time, I'm just thinking now that was literally the month I was getting married. So, there's always big things going on simultaneously in my life, in parallel in my life. So that's just the way it kind of has worked out. But took that position, really had to be self-taught in terms of selling. I did have some really good mentors on the IBM side because we were channel partners with IBM. And again, this was back in the day where IBM had the big corporate offices downtown Manhattan, and just incredible experience, just seeing the way they did things, right? And trying to adapt that into the small company. We were selling software database systems for laboratories, essentially. And they happened to run on IBM workstations. So that was the IBM connection there. From there, I went, got out of that role and moved to another software company doing databases, more focused on laboratories in the industry. No affiliation. We might have had an affiliation with a few of the bigger hardware vendors, but and then from there, I decided that it was time to get away from kind of these smaller companies and really take my hand at leading other people. So I got a job in a chemical plant in downtown Brooklyn, and there I was actually managing a team of chemists and technicians. So it was my first people management role with zero experience, but it was a great learning experience because I got to kind of hone my style, of working with people and getting things done. And that was a very fast-paced chemical environment. We were making stabilizers for the PVC industry. So it was, trucks waiting to load product from huge, vats of huge reactors. And, our lab had to test the stuff before it went out. So a lot of pressure. It was, I grew up in Brooklyn, so I got along well with the teams that were there and kind of the attitude, the New York attitude that comes with that. From there, I actually jumped to where I am now at Agilent. We were Hewlett Packard at that time, and we were a division of Hewlett Packard. And I jumped into a role selling consultatively or technically, if you would. And that once again involved software, but quickly went to CapEx, hardware. So what we do at Agilent, we're a life sciences chemical analysis company. And so think about any scientist touching or technician touching any piece of scientific measurement equipment. We make that. We make that equipment. We create the workflows that equipment utilizes, and we put that into the hands of our customers and work with them and consult with them. So quickly, when I joined, I moved into the CapEx part of the business, the instrument part of the business. So these were long sales cycles, as you might imagine, highly technical sale. Because the technology we were coming out with was innovative, and sometimes you have to educate customers on the innovation, right? It's not here it is in a brochure, right? Back in the day when we had one pagers and that we could actually hold up. You have to educate. So from there, I stayed in sales for quite a while. I did a stint in marketing, which was super informative because, I don't know what you experienced, but many organizations, there's sales here, marketing there, and never the two shall meet. Right? Which is the wrong way to do it. I understand how you get there, especially in large matrix organizations. It can easily get there because you have separate departments with separate metrics. So being in marketing was great. And having the sales background is actually what got me into marketing, because the desire was to have someone who knew how to sell and had been selling to large customers. Towards the end of my direct selling career, I had two large pharmaceutical companies, and I had all their research facilities here in the Northeast. So that was it. I had two customers. So I was deeply embedded in terms of their purchasing cycle, their capital budgets, their projects and their innovations to the best as I could be, given the fact when you're working in the pharmaceutical industry, highly secretive. If they're working on a particular compound, it's got a number on it. They can't tell you what it's for. They're just telling you that they're having a problem analyzing, CP234. Can you help? And you have to go in there and technically figure out, all right, what class of compound is CP234, and how can my tools help you get to the answer that you want? So super interesting. Have always been kind of on the technical side, but really enjoyed the people and relationship side and helping people solve problems and finding people on my team that could help solve the problem. Because the theme you'll keep hearing me say today is that you don't have to have all the answers, right? And a lot of times getting into sales, especially from a technical role, I came off the bench as a chemist. I thought, I can't sell. I have to know everything before I walk into some PhD scientists working on compound 234. Not the case. Not the case. You just need to know where to go to help the customer and know what questions to ask so you can get the right people in front of them. So great experience, great education. From there, several years ago, I moved into sales management, and that was managing sales teams and really bringing on entry-level people for the most part and spinning up a team of what I called HPSO, high-performing sales organization. So these people, we were built for COVID. When the world locked down, we were 100%. We went 100% remote, and we still did our jobs. We were still able to sell and influence and post great revenue because we had prepared a lot beforehand to make sure each rep understood their business, understood their territory, and understood what they needed to do to be successful. So managed direct sales teams, and then I moved into director role, managing other managers, and that's where I am now. And I really enjoy that. So maybe the lesson here, again, not the shortest explanation of my career, but maybe the lesson as I look back in my 30-year sales career, I would say sales opens doors. There's a lot of ways to sell, right? Not every great salesperson is going to make a great manager or a great director, but you find kind of where your sweet spot is, as your career progresses. And really, there were years between these transitions. This wasn't something I joined the company and, in every 2 years I jumped to the next level, right? So yeah, when I hear people wanting that and desiring that, it's like, it doesn't work that way, right? I mean, you've got to produce and master what it is you're doing, and then opportunities will present themselves. And that's been my experience.
Well, that's an interesting point, because we often will train our salespeople to, don't do anything without an objective. Don't do anything without an end goal in mind. And yet, there is room for things to just happen and emerge, and I think maybe we should say, okay, 80, 90% of the time, don't do anything without any clear objective. But sometimes you do benefit from walking into a customer without a clue in your head and just being open to what happens. it's probably not the right best practice for the every single day to day. I mean, we definitely want to have something that we're trying to accomplish much of the time, but leave a little openness for the things you don't know yet,
Yeah.
and
Very appropriate.
careers bring these opportunities up, I think, quite often. I mean, so if I'm following your trajectory, we went chemistry, technology sales, leading leading on the floor of the operations facility, back into sales, then into leadership in other ways. With a marketing thrown in there, I think.
And that was great because that was so informative, because that allows me now in my role to reach in to the marketing organization, because I have relationships there. I have an understanding how they work, what their metrics are. So yeah, that was super helpful. I don't discount that time and that experience at all.
That's great. Well, and I think thinking about my students, I mean, if I could convince them, some of them are convinced, many of them are following this, but you just don't know, and you don't know what you're going to like, and you think you're going to like one thing, and you're going to do it for a couple months after graduation, and go, oh my gosh, why did I ever think that this was the right thing? And you think you're going to not like something, but what you understand about it is just this tiny little microcosm. And we talk about this a lot in terms of geography, right? Well, okay, well, I'm from Houston. I'm from Dallas, Fort Worth. I want to go back to these areas. Maybe that's the best place in the world. Maybe there's a few million other places that might be worth at least dipping your toe in, and the value of when your boss comes up and says, hey, we have an opening in Baton Rouge. Who wants to go to Baton Rouge? And with apologies to people in Baton Rouge, my assumption of the answer to that question is nobody wants to go to Baton Rouge. I drive through there a couple times a year, and the inexplicable traffic alone for a city of that size is enough to make me not want to go to Baton Rouge. But maybe you say, sure, boss, send me, put me in, coach, and you find out, well, there's probably good people there, and there's probably a restaurant that you like, and there's probably a lot of things that redeem any place that you might find yourself. Or, at the age of 20, you've figured all this out. You're right. Dallas Fort Worth is, in fact, the best place in the world to live. Have you ever been to Dallas Fort Worth?
Yes, I have. I've been to Baton Rouge many times. I have a dear friend, pastor friend of mine that lives and preaches in Baton Rouge. It's an interesting town. Love New Orleans. Spent a ton of time there. So yeah, there's a special place. And again, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, right? So when somebody told me New Orleans, exactly what you said, I'm like, really? New Orleans? And then you get there and you meet the people, and you get to Baton Rouge, and you get plugged in to the industry there. And it's like, yeah, everyone is pretty much the same, right? They want to enjoy the work they're doing. They when they ask for help, they want help. They want to raise their family. They want to enjoy the weekends. We're kind of all built the same way. It's interesting what you said. I think one of the ways that you can perhaps get some insight on this. Hey, I'm 20 and I want to go here or do this. Do an internship, right? Mm-hmm. Do an internship, and I'm a strong believer in internships. In fact, just before we got on the call, we just got approval for another intern, because some of our interns, well, all of our interns graduate university, but when they graduate, if they would like a job with us, again, they have to interview, but we will oftentimes find that they have really what it takes. So interning is great because we get to try them on for size, they get to try us on for size, and they get to try our industry on for size. Is this really, like, hey, I'm a rising junior, and I'm taking biomedical engineering, right? And then they come to a company like ours, and like they're not making decisions about how the instruments are made. Like that's not happening at the intern level. Yeah. However, they're selling and they're talking to customers in that industry. And some of them are like, oh, I never thought of that. I never thought that I'd be good at that, because a lot of times, and I heard this on your last podcast, your last guest, a lot of times they've had bad experiences with selling, right? And they need to be told that, and shown that selling is a noble profession. And I had a guy once in a small business, I did some volunteer work for small businesses. I had a guy tell me that selling makes me feel dirty. And he had a very small company. There was like maybe 10, 15 people working in the company. And it was his company. And I'm like, dude, there's something wrong with your impression of selling and what selling is, right? So again, back to internship.
And as a business owner, you gotta get that figured out sooner than later, because
well, exactly. Yeah, nothing happens until somebody sells something. So that was an old Ziegler thing from back in the day. But yeah, so internships are a great way, and and sometimes, like, we had a young man that interned with us selling, and they're not doing, Willie, don't get me wrong, they're not doing like cold calling all day, and it's not that. They're actually selling or pre-qualifying for an opportunity that might be there. A lot of them are doing data analysis and analytics for us based upon the heaps of data that we've amassed over the years. So they're doing really valuable stuff. And we had a young man that did well in that. But hey, when he graduated, he said, "Listen, I was just offered a job with Texas Instruments, and I'm going to be on the process floor, kind of managing these processes." And this was just on the cusp of the big, multi-billion-dollar CHIPS Act and all of that, right? So obviously TI was, trying to get their organization up to speed. And he went there, and I've followed him on LinkedIn and whatnot. We've kept in touch, and just to see his progression in the organization. And there's a perfect example of what he interned for didn't necessarily be the job that he jumped into. But I will tell you, the skills that he got from doing the selling and influencing and analyzing the data, I'm sure that is helping him in his current role.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The internship, to me, I try to, maybe my students are not as insane as I am, but pick the place that sounds the worst, the strangest, the most uncomfortable. Hey, I've never been to the Northeast. Go to the Northeast. Hey, whatever, and find the internship that scares you, that squeezes you, that puts you in a position to grow. The worst case scenario is you hate it for 3 months. It's not even 3 months, 2 months, whatever. Well, that's easy. You can do anything for a couple months. Yeah, you'll come out fine. When you come back to campus, it'll make everything we do look great, by comparison. But the likely scenario is you learn something, you pick something up. You say, okay, well, yeah, I didn't think I was going to like this stuff. And I didn't, but I did find this little gold nugget where I really did enjoy this part, and maybe there's a niche that I can work out there.
And you're making connections, right? You're making connections upon graduation. It's interesting with our interns; they stay on the entire school year and through the summer. So
that's great.
And we compensate them, so it's actually doable. Now, obviously, they don't work a full work schedule where, I always joke around, like, I don't want to get any parent angry because you've paid a lot of money for this education, and I don't want, but what we found is the ones that really fit stay around. Like, we just hired a young lady. She hasn't actually, it's the 8th. She hasn't actually graduated yet, but that's fine. She graduates in a couple of days, and we hired her. She'll be on board next month. And she was an intern with us, I think, for 2 years. And the interesting thing, I went up to the person that was kind of supervising her before we made the decision. And I was like, tell me about so-and-so. And he was like, John, like, we just got through spring break. She was here every day. The other interns, they were off on spring break. She was here every single day. So I was like, okay, that's all I got to hear. And then, of course, we interviewed her, and she was the right fit. But it gave her an advantage. The internship gave her advantage because we've already seen 2 years of how this individual, works in a very large matrixed organization. So I can't say enough good things about internships. We're looking for interns, so maybe at some point I'm going to tap you up on on that. Things have gotten a little easier with our interns because some of them are remote, and that's fine because of the work that we're asking them to do. So they don't have to pack up their bags and move to Delaware necessarily, or New Jersey. I don't know why anybody would want to live here, but yeah. So it has become a little bit easier, and it puts you out there. It starts that networking, and that was another thing I wrote down kind of in my notes as I was preparing for today. What does networking look like? Like, what do your students do now for networking, and what does that look like for them? I'm asking you a question now.
Indeed. So A&M is big and multifaceted, and there are many, many ways that students connect with people in industry. I mean, in the ID program, we have our student organization puts on a career fair with about 100 companies every semester. Beyond our program, there's the Student Engineering Council brings people in for lunch and learns. We have the Technical, Industrial, and Engineering Sales Showdown event that brings companies in. We have the lab hours associated with our sales course, where industry partners come in and do anything from brainstorm to role play with the students, and it's a pretty interaction heavy environment. And then, of course, hopefully they're also doing things just individually, right? Like identifying people on LinkedIn and doing outreach like that. But I would say probably the challenge here is probably identifying which opportunities are the right opportunities, and not trying to do everything and wear yourself out and not be effective in all of it, right? In any of it. And instead saying, okay, well, I know I want to break into this specific industry. So when I see a partner that's in this, these classification codes or whatever, that I'm going to go there come hell or high water. Even if I have to skip class, I'm so interested in this exact industry that I'm going to do some targeting. Because otherwise, you're going to run around, you're going to eat an awful lot of free food, an awful lot of free donuts, and maybe still not have any more clarity than when you started. Which might be okay too at the end of the day. I mean, when you're 20, having some connections is probably better than not having them. Can I ask? Can we take a step back and you described Agilent a little bit, but I'm hoping you can give us like a very concrete example of what we're talking about. So you said technology in our prior conversation. You said it's kind of all things science, right? So give us like just a real concrete example of a type of customer you might work with, the type of problem they might be experiencing, and then the solution that you would bring to bear that would help fix that problem.
Yeah, so there's two ways I can go with it. I can go on the instrumentation side or the workflow side. Let me talk a little bit about the scientific workflows, right? So you've probably heard of PFAS, right? The forever chemicals that are now emissions and monitoring is all regulated now here in the U.S. in wastewater and drinking water. So for that, Agilent makes equipment, scientific equipment, that will analyze the levels of PFAS, and there are thousands of these PFAS chemicals that can show up. So those instruments will actually do the analysis of let's just say drinking water, for example. But before you can actually inject that sample of drinking water into the instrument, you need to do a lot of preparation. There are things there's science that has to happen beforehand. So that's the workflow part. What does the sample preparation look like? How are we going to separate? There could be 128, PFAS compounds in your drinking water. How are we going to separate that? So we make the technology to do the separation. We make the machine that runs the separation, and we make all the product on the front end for the preparation, even containment, right? So you can't just grab any old container and scoop up some drinking water and test it, right? You got to make sure it doesn't have PFAS in it, right? So it's really tip to toe for a workflow like that. We sell the entire workflow. By the way, we also help out with the actual methodology of how to run the instrument for that, what the data looks like. We report the data out with our software. So an example of a customer who might need this is a local municipality, right, that has been chartered with testing drinking water, right? You can't put the drinking water out unless you're below certain levels of PFAS compounds. So there are regulations that are set. You have to run this methodology according to an accepted regulation. It's been accepted by the EPA, and you have to make sure you do this because you have to report this up. It's not like, we'll think about it, right? So many times our customers in that situation that I just gave you, many times our customers don't know how to run the complex equipment that we've sold them or run the methodology that we sold them. So there's a lot of education, Willy, that comes into play. Sometimes we sell the very same thing I just explained to a contract laboratory who collects samples from municipalities and then on a contract basis will do the testing. The surprising thing there is, that's a business. That's its own business, that contract testing lab. So their needs are very different, right? They need a reliable, we all need something reliable and robust that's going to give us the right answer and an accurate answer. But they need it at the lowest cost, right? Because that's how they make money, right? Per sample. So the sales cycle and the sales motions that go into selling to a contract lab, that solution is different than selling to a water board municipality. So does that give you enough of an insight? I mean, again, that's just one piece of chemical analysis. I mean, in Texas alone, you walk into any oil and gas lab, they've got our equipment. I mean, it's for QC, it's for release of product, it's for out of spec products when you have to do investigation chemically, what went wrong, and then we have all of our products in the biopharma and pharma space. So as the drug life cycle goes, you need to test everything from raw materials to intermediates to finished product to efficacy to stability to dosage to everything, right? And our equipment plays there. It also plays on the research side. As scientists are doing core research or research on specific classes of drugs or compounds that could potentially become drugs, they need to do a whole host of testing, and our equipment does that with our workflows and with our people. So it is a complex sale. We do have parts of the business that are transactional, but for the large part, a lot of our business is complex, consultative in nature, and technical.
And can you explain what you mean differentiate between those two concepts for us?
Between consultative and
between the transactional and the consultative solution.
Yeah. So we have some product that is just like, hey, I've been using this since the day I started doing this analysis, and I need another one, or another 5, or another 10. Great examples of that are like clinical laboratories, right, where they're processing blood and urine all day, every day, right? And they've got a set methodology. They have a set cost of what they're going to charge back. So they just need the same thing all day, every day. So, a lot of times that is a more transactional sale. So you've put in the work probably 5 years ago, selling them on the technical aspect. You still have to be there. I say it's transactional, but you still have to be there because this is chemistry. Things happen, right? So their sample matrix might change slightly, or they may need to look for something new as per what their clients are asking. So you need to be top of mind, even though it is transactional. You need to be top of mind, and they need to know that they can come to you in a consultative fashion, so that you can help them. Because ultimately, people want to. This is going to sound cliche. People want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. So. that's our goal ultimately in it for any sales rep. You want that trust, so you're top of mind, so they come to you. And if you can't solve their problem, you've got to be super honest, right? It gets you nowhere to kind of tap dance. Customers are smart, right? So you need to do the right ethical thing and say. I used to travel with a rep that was selling a lot of the chemistry's products years ago. And it was before we had the full portfolio we have today. And the customer wanted something. And he was like, listen, I know John's not going to like this, but we can't help you with this. We can't sell you this. We can't help you with the method. We just don't have this particular technology. But I will tell you where to go, and I'll tell you the guy to go get it from. And I'm completely fine with that, right? Because I want to be seen as a resource, whether it's selling, $1 million worth of my CapEx equipment, or selling $1,000, a piece of chemistry that goes along with it. That customer will be loyal and come back to me because, I did the right moral, ethical thing. So yeah. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned networking. Why there was something in your mind about networking? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, what I've been seeing. We've been going through a great growth cycle here, and we've been doing a lot of interviewing with potential candidates, both experienced and fresh out of school. And what we're seeing is there are some candidates that do such an excellent job of networking. And when I'm talking about networking, I'm not just talking about having, a bang up profile on LinkedIn. That's that's a tactic, right? So when I was in marketing, people thought marketing was just tactics. You put this ad up, you do LinkedIn ads, you do that. No. There's a lot more to marketing, but not to go into that discussion. In networking is more than just doing a tactic. Like, I'm going to hire somebody to write my resume. It's going to look great. And then, people will beat a door to me because I have this great resume. It doesn't work that way, right? We know that. So what we found as we were interviewing candidates, both in the workplace already or just coming out of school, is that some did the networking really well. And that's not only the tactical stuff, like, getting a voice on a platform like LinkedIn, but who they spoke to, who they reached out to. Now, interns have a much better opportunity for that, right? If they're looking to get a job in our company, the interns have access to people in the company. And my experience is that we are more than happy to help. Kind of, if the person shows a true potential and a desire, and are coachable, we will help you, right? And I've done that in my career. I've had other people in my organization do that. But there's another group of candidates that come to the panel interview that really haven't done any of that, and that's alarming, right? It's like nowadays it's super easy. Go to our website, right? You'll understand what we do, right? And when you don't do that, it kind of like, wow, all right, you can be the most polished, charismatic person, but if you haven't done some homework, and again, you don't have to know everything, Willie, right? We said that before, but you have to be able to sell me on the fact that you're the best candidate for this. The tactical stuff we will teach you. Okay, we have certain ways of doing things. We're gonna teach you that part. What we need is the curiosity, right? And that networking, and if you're networking, you're hearing different perspectives. Before we were talking about moving to different cities and experiencing different things. Yeah, I mean, some of your students may want to go into academia, right? So find out what that life is about, right? Because we all have impressions of what what it means to be a tenured professor, and some want to go into secondary ed, right? That was a minor of mine way back in the day, was teaching high school chemistry, and I'm glad it never went that way. Well, I mean, I had better opportunities in industry than I feel I would have had. I do enjoy teaching. I get the opportunity to teach in the role that I'm in now. And, again, that's just the long tail of it. But networking and I don't know that we're really coaching our new hire, or coaching our people to network, right? It's important for me to network, right? As well. I don't know that we're doing, apart from saying, well, here's LinkedIn, build a profile, and go for it. Like, what does it look like? Like, what value are you bringing to the interaction? Again, if you want to talk sales, I mean, that's the whole thing with sales. Like, what value are you bringing? So, networking early and often kind of you exercise that muscle. You find out what works, right? And what doesn't work. I mean, we had a speed networking event at one of our facilities, and I was, one of the volunteers to kind of help out with that. And it's hard in 20 minutes to talk to a PhD student or a postdoc about the research they're doing and what they're thinking, in terms of what industry looks like. 20 minutes, and then the bell rings and it's got to rotate. So there's a good way to do it. Speed networking, in my book, not the best way to do it. We tried. We learned a lot. So I'm not sure we'll be doing that again.
Well, one of the areas that my research tends to focus on is on social network patterns, right, within organizations. And we could get way in the weeds talking about this, but in terms of the tactics, when we tell people, hey, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, it's probably a little both, technical sales, or make sure you're well connected when you start your job, when you get in there, when you get to the new office, when you get to the new region, whatever. Start building these connections, and in my estimation, that's still pretty vague, right? Which I think you were kind of alluding to there as well. Mm-hmm. It's like saying, "Go do it." Okay, well, how? And I'm learning that the way that most people will, the conclusion that most people will come to is that I need to connect with the big bosses. All right. Okay. The VP of sales needs to know my name if I'm on the sales team. I need to connect with the star performers, right? The people who are that get called up on the stage at the end of the year and everybody claps. These big visible people. I need to connect with the popular people, right? It's like going into a new high school and you say, okay, that guy's cool, that girl's cool. I need to know these cool people, right? And it's not a terrible strategy, but it is the strategy that will occur to everybody. Right. So at best, you're probably courting mediocrity, right? It'll get you some benefit, but maybe not the differentiating connections that you really want. And that corresponds to, we could measure it in a couple different ways, but we would call that maybe an eigenvector centrality, which is just a terrible name for it.
Doctor, explain that to me.
Relational centrality. It's, okay. I'm connected with popular people who are well connected and highly visible, and I'm trying to get some kind of reputational benefit. Okay. And when we measure this, it ends up being a driver of performance maybe in half of the companies that we measure it. half is not bad. This is, I mean, it's good. But there's another approach, well, at least maybe one, maybe two more approaches that say, okay, yeah, I see everybody's trying to connect with the VP of sales. And if I'm the VP of sales, that means that a whole bunch of people are bugging me, a whole bunch of people that aren't bringing any value yet are trying to be my best buddy. I don't have enough time as it is, and now I've got every new hire coming. Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, I just wanted to see. Oh, you play golf? Oh, you like it? Oh my gosh, it's just going to be insufferable. As the VP of sales, what I want to know is, are you going to perform? If you want to be on my radar, you need to do really well so that I have to call your name on stage at the end of the year at our big meeting. And then I know, oh, John, he's the guy, the new guy that was hitting all these great performance thresholds. So instead of doing it that way, we could just try to connect with people who we know that other people are not connected with, right? So everybody in my territory, everybody in my division is connected with the VP of sales and the top performer nationally and whatever, the big names. But none of them are connected to the guys over in the warehouse. I'm going to wander down to the warehouse. No major objective in mind at the time, but I'm going to go and I'm going to meet them. I bet if I have good relationships with the people in the warehouse, that if I run into something like, hey, my customer is ready to buy something, but they need it delivered and shipped, and I need to like kind of bump in line, and I bet that could come in handy one day. But only if I know these people, because if I run down to the warehouse and say, hey, you don't know me, hook me up, please. Don't I look nice? Don't you want to help me out? Well, they might, but it's not going to be as not as effective. Or, hey, nobody ever goes and talks to the finance people. I wonder if I go talk to the finance people if, what they taught us in training is the status quo, the business as usual financing options. Mm. Well, but the people working in finance all day, every day have some off the beaten path possibilities. And if I understood, maybe they would let me sell some business that wouldn't qualify under the status quo, the normal procedures, but they would qualify under some special financing that we offer. And very different approach, right? I'm going to ignore the people that everybody else is going after. I'm going to go connect with people who, maybe they know something that I should know. Maybe they can point me in a direction that I've never thought of, right? And when we measure this type of a centrality in organizations, it's predictive of performance damn near 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. That if you can access these pockets of unique information, that you can leverage those to do really, really well. And yet not nearly as obvious to a new employee trying to navigate through this organization, right? Yeah, you should know the VP of sales, sure. But they're going to tell you what everybody else already is, that you're going to get in an echo chamber, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic and one that for, a century or two or more, everybody said, oh, you got to do this. You got to get out there and network. How? When?
What does that look like?
How long? How much time should I spend on it? Yeah, it's quite.
Yeah, there has to be a innate curiosity, right? Otherwise, and it has to be grounded in the desire to do something well, right? And not just to scratch your way to a particular position, and because that you can see that a mile away, right? So you can see that coming.
That's true.
You have to
authenticity. Yeah,
and another thing is you have to put in the time. Right? I mean, this stuff doesn't happen in the microwave minute. This is we tell many of our new hires, like, hey, the first 6 months, you got to give us 3 years before you're really hitting it, right? And that's we will have already weeded out the people who can't do that before the hiring process, but we're very clear that this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? So you're not going to get in here. And I had one guy who just wanted the JOB so that he could get into the company, right? It was super clear in the interview. And I was like, well, that's not really what we're looking for here. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's interesting to see that you've researched this and you actually have some data and insights that show the classic way we've been teaching this or modeling it is not the right way. I think of the word organic as you were talking, right? Because that's really what it is. It is organic, and you've got to be willing to kind of ask the questions. And we like to tell our reps to utilize all the resources they have, and don't be afraid of bringing other people into the deal, right? Other employees into the deal, right? That for years, back in the old days of selling, it was like, no, I got this. Don't come into my account because all you're going to do is mess it up, right? Well, you can't sell that way anymore. And you probably couldn't sell that way back then, in the 70s either. However, that just doesn't work. Yeah, I want my customers, just back to when I was selling to these two large pharmaceutical companies, I want them to see our company as more than just me, more than just John, right? Yeah, I got to know them. I got to know what they did on vacation and how many kids they had and all of that. But I wanted them to meet the guy who designed this particular instrument. And I had the opportunity to do that a couple of times. Wow. I mean, instant credibility for our company, right? Trust built with me because I'm bringing someone, and the cool factor, right? We, in science, there's not there's not a lot of like cool celebrities, but we acquired a company many years ago, and a professor from he's since passed from UC Davis was the owner of the company that we acquired. But he was a legend in the scientific world for what he did.
Yeah.
We brought him out on a tour. I brought him into these pharmaceutical companies, and you would think like Madonna was there, back in the day. Okay, back in the 80s, right? So you would think, J-Lo, or pick, and he was a guy. Oh gosh, his name is escaped. I'm going to get it as soon as we get off this call here. Walt Jennings. Yeah, I mean, in the scientific world, in coated capillary tubing, Walt Jennings is the guy. Created the technology at UC Davis. Formed this company. It was great. And to bring somebody like that in, again, the only purpose was just, hey, meet Walt, I happen to be there too, right? So it gives you an excuse to go in and to look left and look right. Another thing that I think is a kind of a lost art, right? Getting back to kind of sales tactics here, or sales motions here. Even if you don't have what they need right now, you go into that account and it's like, hey, what are you doing? Ask questions. How, I don't know if I can help you, but we're just here to find out, what you're doing, right? So we can understand our solutions, how they could fit better for you and be more consultative. So never had a problem bringing other people into my accounts. We still preach that to this day, because the company is much bigger than me, sales rep, walking in.
Absolutely. Well, I am keeping an eye on our time here. I think we should probably close it up, but I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate everything you've shared in this ongoing pursuit of understanding what the different manifestations of technical sales. And I think Agilent is kind of in the deep end of one side of that continuum, right? So I think this is very valuable insights. And any closing thoughts?
I think just to reiterate what I said before, you don't have to know anything. If I'm talking to a question I like to ask people is, what would you tell your 20-year-old self, right? Yep. And if I had to tell my 20-year-old self something, it would be, John, you don't have to know everything. You're an analytical chemist, right? You have degrees that say that, but you don't have to be afraid of not having all the analytical answers, and just be curious. So, put yourself in there, jump in the pool, and every interaction is another learning experience. So, all the sales trainers talk about, how many no's you have to get, and every no should be an opportunity to learn more. And yeah, sometimes a no is just a no. It's nothing that you did. It's just a no. So yeah, I tell myself to lighten up a little bit and not have to feel you know everything. And that takes the burden, right, off of being the expert, that you show up authentically. And a lot of times what you'll find is you think these people know your company and your solution, and they don't. They really don't. They need what you have. I mean, I would never sell for a company with a product I didn't believe in, right? So they need what it is you have to offer, and you're giving them something. Yeah, there's a transaction there with money and all that, and quota, but you are giving them something. You're providing them some value. And if you approach it that way, with a little bit of humility or a lot of humility, over time, you're going to build a good sales career.
Yep. Perfect. Well, thank you again.
Yeah. No, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
That's it for this interview. I hope you got something valuable out of it. Of course, if you did, be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast on whatever app you use to listen. Also, share this with your colleagues and friends, and let's continue to have a deeper discussion on all things related to selling and sales leadership. See you next time in the Sales Lab.